what's the difference between massive open online courses and these boot camps?
I think the big difference is just the structure, right? And like how it's built. So a MOOC is just like, hey, you can watch a bunch of videos, but if you get stuck, you're on your own. If anything happens, you're on your own. There's nobody there to make sure you're doing something or correct if you're doing something wrong. It's just, the material is there, which it's better than nothing, right? I don't want people to feel like I'm bashing MOOCs. I'm glad that that's there.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's the final solution to anything.
Got it. And so for the people that don't know, these coding boot camps started like in 2012, I think. Mm-hmm. They, short form, they started off kind of like it's 3-month immersive, like took essentially what was in colleges for 2 to 4 years and condensed it into the practical things you got to know for that amount of time. Yep. And a lot of them were like tuition up front. Some of them were deferred tuition. And then now there's these income share agreements. Can you kind of walk us through those models and, what your thoughts are about that right now?
Yeah. So, in the beginning, it was just a couple crazy guys that were like, you know what, I could teach you to code pretty quickly. And there's a huge demand. And, why don't you just pay me, 10, 15 grand and I'll teach you to code and you can see if it works and you can go get a job. And that worked, surprisingly. A lot of people didn't think it would, but turns out the skills that people required don't actually take 4 years to get, right? So, as that industry has kind of grown and developed, there started to be kind of tuition deferred where you'd pay, after you graduated a little bit. And now I think that the future is going to be income share agreements, which is, at least at Lambda School, I can't speak for every school, but none of our students pay anything until they get a job in the industry they've studied that pays them more than $50,000 a year. Mm-hmm. So to start off, if they don't get that job, they don't pay us anything.
Yeah, and personally, when I went and did a coding bootcamp, I went through App Academy, and one of the things that attracted me was the deferred tuition model. Mm-hmm. Basically, the school is incentivized to help you find a job because you're paying them once you get a job and they get a percentage of your salary. Can you talk about how, I guess, incentives of boot camps are different than incentives of colleges?
Yeah.
And the primary driver is the tuition. So what are your thoughts on that?
It's funny because, we talk to a lot of people at universities and administrators and stuff. And, we talk to them about like, what are your outcomes? What is the debt to income ratio of your graduates? Mm-hmm. What does all that look like? And I've been shocked at the number that say, you know what, that's just not our focus. That's not what we think about. Mm-hmm. College isn't here to help you get a job. We're here to help you become a better, more well-rounded person.
But if you ask the student, why are you going to college?
Right. 99% are just like, I'm here so I can have a career. Yeah. Right. And if not, that's a really expensive thing to do to become a well-rounded person. Mm-hmm. So I've just been shocked that, you hear a lot of myths and rumors about how academia thinks that way, but I didn't realize how literal that is. Mm-hmm. Like most colleges, and I can't say that for all of them, but a lot of them, they literally don't consider it their role to help you get a job.
Yeah. And so this idea started off with a bunch of crazy guys and it started working and then it started growing from 2012 to now. I think last year, like 25,000 people graduated versus like 50,000 from 4-year universities. And apparently that number is growing like 50% year over year. But can you talk to us a little bit more about the size of this alternative form of education or just engineers in general and the need for it and why people are pushing towards that direction?
Yeah, that's a funny question we get a lot is, is the market saturated? Are there too many engineers for the jobs? But what you're not realizing is, what is the growth of like the technology industry? Mark Andreessen talks about how, software is eating the world and pretty much every company has a software role now, right? Like we have graduates that are working in software at Nordstrom. I had a graduate that just interviewed at Sonic Drive-Ins on their tech team. Like literally every company has a software, or a tech element to it now. And I actually met with a VP at Amazon a few weeks ago, and he said, 3 or 4 years from now, Amazon will be hiring enough that we could literally hire every single computer science grad in the U.S., just Amazon alone, and it still wouldn't be enough to fill our pipeline of how many engineers we're going to need. That's one company, right? It's a big company, but that's just one of the thousands of companies.
Yeah, and if software's eating the world, there's plenty of opportunities. And so with that said, another thing that comes up when people talk about the boot camps is like Some of them are doing really well. Some of them are shutting down. Some of them are getting acquired. I know a recent acquisition that happened was the Hack Reactor Galvanized. Like, what are your thoughts about consolidation in the space? What are your thoughts about the General Assembly acquisition by Adecco, or even Recruit Holdings acquiring Glassdoor? Like, what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of really healthy consolidation happening in the space. So when people realize that you could teach somebody to program and charge them $10,000 and they can get a job on the other side, everybody said, you know what, that's what I want to do. And there were varying levels of seriousness about it and varying levels of quality around it. Turns out it's a lot harder to teach people to program than most non-instructors think it would be. So there are just code schools popping up all over the place. So I think what we're seeing is the schools that are more expensive on the top are competing over fewer students that can actually afford that kind of education. So if I'm a Hack Reactor and I'm charging, $18,000, $20,000 up front in San Francisco, at a certain point you just run out of people that can pay that kind of money if there are 80 other boot camps opening up charging $20,000. So I think that market of people that have $20,000 in their pocket is smaller than people had assumed. But on the other hand, I feel like the market of people who are able and willing to learn to code is much, much bigger than anybody even realizes yet.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. And given that all these programs are popping up, and one of the nice things about colleges is like things like accreditation and like knowing quality, even though there's obviously bias with credentials and Ivy League status stuff. But how do you feel about quality and standards? I know there's like the CIRR standards and Council for, like, how do you feel about like holding these boot camps accountable to what they're actually saying? Because people can just look at it like a get rich quick scheme.
Yeah, I mean, boot camps promise a lot, right? And it's still a tough, steep hill to climb if you're going to go from, making $20K a year in a non-development job to making, call it, some schools in San Francisco advertise $100K plus. Like, that's a big swing in income. I think that if you're going to charge people a bunch of money, you absolutely should be beholden to what the results are. That's one of the things I love about, Lambda School and our income share agreement is we literally will never make a penny unless it works for you. And I think that's fair. That's really difficult to do from a school's perspective.
Yeah.
But I think it's a better deal for the students overall.